Welcome, Gun Runner.
The glory days of the video game arcade might be a long way behind us, sadly, but they certainly haven't been forgotten, and in this video I'm going to take you back over 30 years to those heady days that played such an important part of our youth. The year is 1986 and we're all present at one of the greatest times in coin-op video game history. You won't find any fruit machines, penny pushers or fixed prize machines here. These are the true arcade classics that lit up dingy smoke-filled rooms, sat on stained carpets whilst they delighted audiences and drained people's pockets of all their spare change. Names like Sega, Atari, Konami, Taito and Namco have all become synonymous with gaming, and so it'll be no surprise to see them feature heavily in this video. This is where many of today's popular franchises started, multiple innovations took place, and the genres that we know and love today were formed. All these titles play every bit as well today as they did back then and deserve to be remembered as true classics in the annals of video game history. So I better stop waffling and get on with it then, as I present to you the very best arcade games that 1986 had to offer. Sports games have always been a staple of arcade companies everywhere. In fact, it was a sports game that kick-started the whole industry when Atari unleashed Pong on the world in 1972. In 1986, Konami changed how we saw basketball games forever with the hugely successful Double Dribble. It offered realism like we'd never seen before, full quotas of teams, stats, different dunks, cutscenes, and even some incredibly limited commentary. Truly groundbreaking stuff for the time. Back in 1983, Sega licensed and sold their own home versions of Bally Midway's classic Spy Hunter, and were desperate for more of the same, so rather than wait for Bally Midway to come up with a true sequel, they created one of their own in Action Fighter. This game featured the same top-down viewpoint and a similar plot: chase the enemy agents and kill them, or run them off the road. But now saw you changing into different vehicles, including a motorbike and even a jet fighter. I bet you all thought that Sega's House of the Dead was the very first horror-themed gun game, right? Well, you'd be very much wrong, as Exidy visited the genre some 10 years earlier. Chiller shocked audiences so much with its adult themes that it was actually banned across most of the US, and so never saw the wider audience that it most definitely deserved. The game saw you shooting your way out of a blood-soaked dungeon to escape a creepy mansion and basically avoid being murdered by what lurked there. Also known as Life Force, Salamander was a sequel to the hugely popular shoot-'em-up Gradius. It added to the winning formula of the original game by introducing vertically scrolling stages to the existing horizontal affairs, and also disposed of the annoying checkpoint system of its predecessor by allowing you to continue where you left off when a life was lost. Salamander was just as big a hit on home systems too, as it was in the arcades, spawning a number of very high quality conversions. The second sports game on this list, Side Pocket did for pool what Double Dribble did for basketball. Data East Game went all out to recreate the world of pool and billiards, from the seedy locations and lifelike characters to the funky jazz soundtrack and trick shot challenges. For the first time in a video game you had full control over both the cue and the ball, allowing you to perform just about every type of shot imaginable. It also managed to be just as good on your own as it was playing against a friend. Rygar was one of the founders of a new type of subgenre that arrived around this time, the platform adventure-based beat-em-up. Combining the best elements of several different types of games, Tecmo's Rygar saw you exploring a mythical world, taking out enemies, upgrading your weapons, and negotiating the tricky terrain. Rygar was much deeper than many other coin-ops of the time, and saw even more success on the home systems of the age than it did in arcade halls. The year before had seen the tremendous success of Atari's Gauntlet, and other arcade companies were very keen to cash in on the success of the 4-player dungeon crawler. Sega decided to take the genre into space when they released Alien Syndrome, a strictly 2-player affair that added a couple of elements of its own. As well as some standard top-down maze-orientated shooting action, you also had to save the hostages and defeat a huge grotesque boss, making it more than just another clone. Darius was the game that started the whole franchise off that we're still playing today, with recent releases for Nintendo's Switch console. It was also notable for several more interesting reasons. It was the first game to use 3 screens to wrap around the player, giving a huge play area, and was also the first game of its type to allow you to choose your own route through the levels, giving it multiple different endings. Home versions soon followed, but none of them quite managed to truly replicate the full arcade experience. This is another game that kicked off a hugely popular franchise, one that many had forgotten until it made a recent comeback. Wonder Boy is a cute and colourful platform game set in our prehistoric past, with the strange addition of a skateboard as a power-up. The gameplay is pretty much straightforward, but the style of the visuals, jaunty themes and tight controls lift it above many other similar games of the time. It also enjoyed tremendous success on the home formats too. Nobody has ever made a James Bond arcade game, but Rolling Thunder is definitely 007 in all but its name. You play as a secret agent trying to rescue your female partner from the clutches of an evil villain. You have to infiltrate his hideout, take out his henchmen, and then make your way to the final battle with the big boss himself. The one really unique feature of Rolling Thunder was the ability to enter doors to upgrade weapons, collect ammo, and even avoid enemy fire. Another hugely innovative title, Atari's 720 simulated the world of skateboarding. Taken on an isometric 3D perspective, the game allowed great freedom as you made your way around the skate park, completing the challenges and earning rewards. Both your board and your apparel could be upgraded, and rather than just continually sucking your coin collection dry, 720 rewarded expert players with extra playtime, something pretty much unheard of in games of the time. Whilst top-down run-and-gun shooters started with Taito's Frontline, they were made popular by Capcom's Commando, and then taken to the next level by SNK's Ikari Warriors. Added to an already winning formula was the addition of a second player for some great co-op action, and tanks that could be climbed into, turning you into an all-out war machine. The lead characters from Ikari Warriors would later make up a key part of the roster for SNK's much celebrated King of Fighters series. Atari's much-loved Sprint series may have first hit the arcade some 10 years earlier, but Super Sprint was definitely the pinnacle of the franchise. The game allowed 3 people to crowd round a cabinet at the same time to race each other around a series of increasingly difficult tracks. Cars could be upgraded by collecting spanners that littered the asphalt, and only the best drivers would progress from each race. Super Sprint is still regarded by many as one of the best multiplayer coin-op video games ever. From one famous arcade racer to another, Sega's motorbike extravaganza Hang On had been a huge hit in 1985, so it was only natural that they would want to follow it up with a sequel. But before we got to enjoy that game in Super Hang On, 1987, we were given the crazy Enduro Racer. It took the same engine and same genre, but upped the ante by swapping your tuned race machine for an all-action stunt bike. Now you could skid around corners, jump over obstacles, and perform a series of clever tricks as you tried to beat the clock. Whilst it was Atari who first introduced the bat and ball brick smashing genre in 1976 with the hugely influential Breakout, a coin-op co-engineered by Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak no less, 10 years later Taito would take the format to the next level with Arkanoid. Whilst the basic object of the game is exactly the same, several key additions made it remarkably more enjoyable. As well as different types of bricks and more varied formations of them, you could now collect handy power-ups, all of which affected the game in different ways. While Gauntlet II is virtually the same game in many ways as its predecessor, the small upgrades Atari introduced with it make it more than worthy of its place on this list. Players could now select the same characters, meaning no more arguments over the control panel, and new collectibles were added including the now infamous It. The addition of a boss in the form of a fiery red dragon was also a welcome upgrade from the original. Gauntlet 2 remains a true multiplayer classic to this very day. When Taito licensed Renegade from Technos for release in the West, they set about a revolution in the scrolling beat-em-up genre. Renegade was succeeded by the now legendary Double Dragon series and saw the player taking on a series of street gangs across a violent, crime-ridden city. Your foes were able to utilise weapons, ride motorcycles and perform team attacks, making your fight much harder than any games that had come before it. The impact of Renegade on arcade audiences is not to be underestimated. Multiplayer games have definitely had a big impact on this list, and Rampage is arguably the biggest and most enjoyable of them all. In fact, as a single player game, Rampage gets boring very quickly, but add 2 of your friends into the equation and it's a whole different ballgame. Pick from one of 3 huge monsters, drop from a blimp and then get to work smashing up every major city in North America. Your friends get in the way or steal your food, then smash them up too. What's not to love about Rampage? When it comes to arcade platformers, in my opinion there can only be one, not just from 1986 but from any year, and Bobble is that game. The concept is just crazy. Take the role of a cute dragon, jump around levels blowing bubbles at baddies to kill them, and then grab all the goodies that they leave behind. Bobble is as crazy and chaotic as it is cute, and boy is it a lot of fun. It's no surprise that this game spawned numerous sequels, but none of them managed to quite live up to the magic of the original. Looking down the list of great arcade games that released in 1986, there was only ever going to be one winner. A driving game that changed how we perceive the genre forever, and gave Sega a real identity. The blue skies of OutRun became synonymous with the Japanese arcade company. The music has become legendary, and the game a true classic that has stood the test of time with its many sequels, remakes and re-releases. OutRun isn't just the best arcade game of 1986, it's one of the greatest arcade racers of all time, perhaps even the finest of them all. And that rounds up my look at the greatest arcade games of 1986. Are there any you can think of that should have made the list, or do you disagree with any of the entries that I did include? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. But before I go, I must thank all of my loyal patrons for continuing to support my channel and make videos like this possible. However, I must give special thanks to the following patrons in particular for their much appreciated pledges: Mitchell Valentino, James Taylor, Neptune, Chaotic, Seth Robinson, Carl Olsen, DOS Gamerman, and my new high-level patron, Electron Star Collapse. If you want to help support all my creative endeavours, including this YouTube channel, then please go and check out my Patreon right now, where you can get access to a host of extra content, including downloads, exclusive videos, creative insights, and much more besides. I've been the Laird, I thank you for watching, and I'll see you all again for another video very soon.